All right, get ready for something a little different today. We're heading to a place you might not immediately think of for wine.
Definitely off the beaten path.
Yeah, the Italian Alps.
Oh,
We're
wow.
doing a deep dive into Valle d'Aosta wine today. Got a whole stack of articles, tasting notes, and honestly, I'm already fascinated. It's just not where you typically picture vineyards.
Yeah.
More like ski slopes and
Yeah.
mountain climbing, that sort of thing.
It is a very unique region, both geographically and in terms of its culture.
And the photos? Wow. Snow-capped peaks, these valleys that are just this intense emerald green.
Beautiful.
Makes you want to just, I don't know, go hike there immediately. But then I read about this thing called heroic viticulture, and suddenly it's not so peaceful anymore. Like, there's a struggle going on in those vineyards.
Yeah, that's the thing about Valle d'Aosta. It's full of these contrasts. You have the scenery, which is definitely tranquil and beautiful, but making wine there, that's a whole other story. It's a constant battle against the elements, the terrain. We're talking vineyards clinging to these incredibly steep slopes, some of them almost 4,000 feet up.
4,000 feet. That's like higher than most mountains I've ever been on.
That's right. Higher than almost any other vineyard in Europe.
So how did winemaking even begin in a place like that? It doesn't seem like the easiest place to just casually plant some grapes.
Well, you have to go way back in time to understand that. We're talking the Bronze Age.
Wow, really?
Yeah, there's actual evidence of vines being cultivated there from around that time. It seems like those early inhabitants of the region were already drawn to, I don't know, maybe they saw something special, the potential of this really unique terroir.
So they were basically the OG extreme viticulturalists.
You could say that.
But I'm guessing things have changed a bit since the Bronze Age, right?
Winemaking has to have evolved. I mean, it's been a while. Oh, definitely. The Celts also had a hand in shaping the winemaking traditions of the region, but it was really the Romans who laid the groundwork for what we see today in Valle d'Aosta.
The Romans, always organizing things.
Right. They saw the potential, they had a knack for that. They introduced more structured viticultural practices. And really, I mean, they came up with some ingenious solutions to make the most of those incredibly steep slopes.
Yeah, those terraced vineyards, right?
Exactly. They were designed to maximize sun exposure, and it's crazy?
What?
They're still in use today. Centuries later, those Roman techniques are still proving to be effective.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, the Romans knew a thing or two about engineering, obviously, but for those vineyards to still be viable today, that just shows how well they understood the land.
It's true. It speaks to their understanding of how to work with the environment, not against it, to produce quality grapes. They knew about sunlight, drainage, soil composition, all those principles that are still fundamental to viticulture today.
It really makes you think about the history behind every glass of wine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it couldn't have always been smooth sailing. I mean, between the Romans and today, there must have been some ups and downs for Valle d'Aosta winemaking.
Oh, for sure. The medieval period, for example, was a time of great upheaval. And it was actually the church that played a key role in preserving those Roman winemaking traditions during that era.
Really? The church?
Yeah, they kept those practices alive through all the turmoil.
Huh, that's a fun fact. So, cheers to the church for today's Valle d'Aosta wines.
Absolutely.
All right, but let's go back to those extreme conditions for a minute. We've talked about heroic viticulture, but break it down for me. Just how much does altitude actually affect the final product, the wine itself?
It's not just about the steep slopes, right? You have to think about a grapevine up there battling this harsh climate, intense sun, a short growing season, these huge temperature swings between day and night. That's life for a vine in Valle d'Aosta.
Like boot camp for grapes.
That's one way to put it. And you know what? All those challenges actually result in grapes with really unique qualities. We're talking exceptionally high acidity, firm tannins, and really, really concentrated aromas.
So the wines must be pretty intense then, huh? Like a flavor munch in the face?
You could definitely say that. It's a flavor profile that's really hard to find anywhere else.
Okay, now I really want to taste some of these wines.
Right.
But first, tell me about the grapes themselves.
Right.
I understand Valle d'Aosta is all about those indigenous varieties, the ones perfectly adapted to this crazy environment we've been talking about. What are we dealing with here?
That's right. It's all about celebrating the native grapes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of diversity there. On the red side, the most widely planted is Petit Rouge.
Okay, Petit Rouge.
It's known for making these lighter-bodied, fruity wines that are fantastic to drink young.
So like the Gamay of the Alps.
Yeah, if you're looking for a comparison, that's a good one.
I do love a good Gamay. So Petit Rouge, maybe for a picnic in the mountains? But what if I want something with a bit more, oomph?
Then we have to talk about Fumin.
Fumin. Okay.
It's an ancient grape. They make wines that are built to age, full-bodied, complex, with incredible depth. Like, think the Barolo of the Alps, but with its own unique alpine twist.
Fumin, going on the list. What kind of flavors are we talking about? Give me the tasting
All
notes.
right, with Fumin, imagine those dark fruits like blackberries, plums. You get earthy notes as well, forest floor, leather, often a hint of spice, maybe some black pepper.
Okay, that's pretty evocative. I can almost smell it.
It's hard to describe. You really have to try it.
So we've got the lighter Petit Rouge, the age-worthy Fumin. Anything else I should be on the lookout for on the red side?
There's also cornalin, which is kind of in between those two in terms of body. It's got this beautiful balance of power and finesse. Think ripe berries, a touch of spice, and you even get some floral hints in there.
My tasting notes are getting longer and longer. Any hidden gems?
Well, for the adventurous, you've got Valle. It's a rare one, but it's light-bodied and very easy drinking. And then there's Prometta, which comes from a late ripening grape. So you get these full-bodied wines that are just perfect with game dishes, which are very popular in the region. Imagine venison stew with a Prometta.
Stop, I'm getting hungry.
Yeah.
Okay, we've done the reds. What about the white wines? What stories are those grapes telling? Especially up in these extreme conditions, they must be pretty special.
Oh, they definitely have their own stories to tell. And when it comes to Val d'Aosta whites, you have to start with Prix Blanc.
Prix Blanc, all right.
It's the white grape of the region.
Okay, why? What makes it so special?
Well, for one, it has this really incredible history. Prix Blanc is one of the few European grape varieties that was actually resistant to phylloxera.
Phylloxera, that's the louse that wiped out, like most of Europe's vineyards back in the day.
Exactly, yeah. Most other grapes weren't so lucky.
So Prix Blanc, the survivor.
A true survivor, and that resilient character really shows up in the wine, too.
Okay, tell me about it. What can I expect in a glass of Prix Blanc?
You'll usually find they're dry, with that lively acidity we've been talking about. And the aromas are really captivating. You get those citrus fruits, lemon, grapefruit, some white flowers, and often this really distinctive herbal note that adds complexity. It's hard to describe.
I do love herbal notes in wine. It adds that extra dimension.
Hmm.
So I'm already a fan of Prix Blanc, and I haven't even tried it yet. Now, I know Prix Blanc's like the star, but any other white grapes I should be on the lookout for.
Definitely keep an eye out for Petit Arvine.
Petit Arvine, okay. Another one for the list.
It's originally from Switzerland, but it has really found a perfect home in the high altitudes of Valle d'Aosta. It makes these wines that are, well, truly unique.
What makes it so unique? Is it that alpine magic again?
It's this combination of super intense citrus flavors a lot of the time. You get that grapefruit pithiness, that slightly bitter, tangy flavor. And then it has this really pronounced saline minerality. It's almost salty.
Salty wine, huh? Didn't know that was a thing.
It's like a burst of mountain air in a glass.
That sounds incredibly refreshing.
It is.
Okay, Petit Arvine, check. So it seems like Valle d'Aosta is like a white wine paradise. But I'm curious, with all this emphasis on the indigenous grapes, are they doing anything with international varieties at all?
That's a good question. You do find some international varieties being grown there, like Nebbiolo, Pinot Noir, even some Chardonnay. It shows the region's versatility, but to me, the real magic is in those native grapes. They capture the spirit of Valle d'Aosta in a way that international varieties just can't.
That makes sense. It's all about those contrasts, like you said earlier. Speaking of contrast, I'm curious about the winemaking process itself. It's a region steeped in tradition, but I imagine they must be using modern techniques as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a fascinating blend of old and new. For example, some producers still use indigenous yeasts for fermentation, meaning they rely on those yeasts that are naturally present on the grapes and in the winery environment.
So they're literally harnessing the wild yeasts of the Alps.
It's about embracing those elements that are unique to the region.
That's pretty cool.
But they also incorporate modern temperature-controlled fermentation techniques.
Ah, so it's the best of both worlds.
You got it. They're respecting the past, but also using the tools that allow them to create the best possible expressions of those grapes. And you know what? The result is this amazing range of styles. You've got powerful reds, crisp whites, rosés, even sparkling wines.
There's something for everyone, it seems.
Yeah.
But with all this variety, how do they even keep track of it all? Is there like a system for ensuring quality and authenticity?
Absolutely. And that's where the Italian DOC system comes in, Denominazione di Origine Controllata.
Okay, the DOC. That's like a seal of approval for Italian wine, right?
You got it. It guarantees that what's in the bottle truly reflects the region and its traditions.
So it's like a way of protecting both the wines and the reputation of the region.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
The entire Valle d'Aosta region is covered by the Valle d'Aosta DOC, but it's then divided into 7 unique subzones.
Whoa, subzones. So it's like a DOC within a DOC.
You could think of it that way. Each subzone has its own specific set of rules based on its unique terroir. For example, the types of grapes that are allowed, minimum aging requirements, even the altitudes of the vineyards, it's all very precisely defined.
So it's like a roadmap for understanding the different expressions of Valle d'Aosta wines.
Yeah, and some of these subzones have the most incredible names. Like there's one called Enfer d'Arvier, which translates to Hell of Arvier.
Hell Arvier. Okay, I need to know more about this.
Well, it's named for these incredibly steep, south-facing slopes, the ones that get blasted by the sun all day. They were formed by ancient volcanic activity, so it's quite a dramatic landscape.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, and the wines from this subzone, well, they're known for their power and intensity.
Okay, powerful wines from a place called Hell. I'm intrigued. Any other subzones I should have on my radar?
If you're a Nebbiolo fan, the Donna subzone is the place to be. It's known for those bold, age-worthy Nebbiolos that are, well, kind of reminiscent of Barolo and Barbaresco, but with that alpine twist.
Nebbiolo in the Alps? That sounds pretty epic. Anything else?
Oh, and then there's Blanc de Morges et de la Salle, which is home to, get this, the highest altitude vineyards in Europe.
Highest in Europe.
Seriously. And what's amazing is that they produce this unique style of Pré Blanc there, one that's known for incredible crispness, minerality, and a flavor profile that's unlike anything else. It's truly a taste of those extreme heights.
All right, my must-visit list is officially out of control. But you know what? We can't talk about Valle d'Aosta wine without talking about the food.
You're absolutely right.
It's like imagine sipping on these incredible alpine wines without the perfect pairing.
It's a culinary match made in heaven. The synergy between those wines and that hearty alpine cuisine.
So break it down for me. What are the must-try pairings in Valle d'Aosta?
Okay, first of all, you can't go wrong with Fontina cheese. It's a classic for a reason. It's rich, nutty, and pairs beautifully with those crisp white wines, especially the Pré Blanc.
Okay, Fontina and Pré Blanc. Got it. What else?
And remember those game dishes we were talking about? Venison, wild boar, rabbit, all those rich, flavorful meats. They're just begging to be paired with the more robust reds, like the Enfer d'Arvier or the Prometta.
I can picture it now. A crackling fire, views of the mountains, a plate of venison, and a glass of Enfer d'Arvier.
Exactly. But it's not just about the fancy stuff. Even the simpler dishes, like polenta, barley soup, they all have their ideal wine matches. The local cuisine is about using those fresh, seasonal ingredients, keeping things rustic and authentic. And the wines are made to be enjoyed with the food. It's all part of the experience.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm booking a trip to Valle d'Aosta as soon as we're done recording.
You won't regret it.
But before we get carried away with our culinary fantasies, let's step back for a second. It all sounds idyllic, but producing wine in those challenging conditions, there must be downsides, right?
Of course, there are always challenges. We're talking about a harsh climate, difficult terrain, and a smaller production scale. That inevitably creates its own set of complexities.
So it's not just romantic mountain vineyards. There's real work and struggle involved.
Absolutely. And it's part of what makes these wines so special. It's about working with nature, respecting its limits. And one thing that I really admire about the region is their commitment to sustainability. They're very focused on protecting that fragile mountain environment.
That's good to hear. So they're not just focused on the wine, they're thinking about the long-term health of the region.
Exactly. And they're also embracing research and innovation, always looking for ways to improve their winemaking while preserving the unique character of their wines. It's an ongoing process.
It sounds like they're striking that balance between honoring tradition and embracing progress, which is impressive. I started this deep dive with curiosity, but honestly now I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed.
It is a lot to take in, isn't it?
There's just so much to discover about Valle d'Aosta.
But that's the beauty of a deep dive, right? We're peeling back the layers, uncovering the history, the culture, the passion that goes into every bottle. It's about the journey as much as the destination.
Well said. And I think our listeners are in for quite a journey as we continue exploring this fascinating region.
I think so too. But before we move on, I'm curious, what's standing out to you so far about Valle d'Aosta?
Honestly, it's that incredible sense of place. You can really feel the influence of the mountains, the history, the culture, and everything. It's like you're tasting a piece of the landscape itself.
I couldn't have put it better myself. And that brings us to another fascinating aspect, the actual winemaking process. How do they transform those mountain grapes into the incredible wines we keep hearing about?
That's exactly what I want to know.
Well, then let's dive in. So you want to know how they turn those mountain grapes into liquid gold. It all starts with the harvest, and let me tell you, harvest in Valle d'Aosta is not your typical grape picking experience.
Yeah, after all we've learned about those slopes, I'm picturing something pretty intense.
You're not wrong. Imagine trying to harvest grapes on terrain so steep that you can barely stand up straight, forget about using any kind of machinery. In a lot of places, they still have to do the whole harvest entirely by hand.
Talk about heroic harvesting, huh? That sounds more like an extreme sport than a viticultural practice.
You could say that, but it's also a testament to the passion and dedication of the people who make wine in Valle d'Aosta. They're willing to put in that back-breaking work to get those grapes off the vines, and even after the harvest is done, the real work is just beginning.
I'm all ears. What happens next?
The next step is sorting. And I don't mean just a quick once-over. They have to go through each bunch of grapes meticulously, making sure that only the absolute highest quality fruit goes into the wine.
I can see why they'd be so picky with those limited yields and all. Every grape must count.
You got it. They can't afford to waste anything. So once they've got those perfectly sorted mountain grapes, that's when the real transformation begins, the magic of fermentation.
Ah, yes, fermentation, the heart of winemaking. But I'm guessing even that process is a little different in Valle d'Aosta.
You're catching on. And this is where we see that constant interplay between tradition and innovation that makes Valle d'Aosta so fascinating. For example, a lot of the winemakers still use indigenous yeasts for fermentation.
Hold on, indigenous yeasts. What exactly are those?
Indigenous yeasts are the naturally occurring yeasts that live on the grapes and in the winery itself. They're unique to each region, which is why they contribute so much to a wine's sense of place. It's like capturing the essence of the terroir in microbial form.
So it's like they're literally fermenting the wines with a little piece of the Alps.
Exactly. It's about embracing those unique elements that you can't find anywhere else. But it's not just about tradition. They also incorporate modern temperature-controlled fermentation techniques as well.
Ah, so it's that balance again. Honoring the traditions while also using technology to ensure quality and consistency.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's a best of both worlds. Temperature control allows them to really fine-tune the fermentation process to extract the best possible flavors and aromas from those mountain grapes. And then, of course, there's aging.
Aging, that's where the wine really develops its character. Right?
Absolutely. And even in the aging process, we see that same blend of tradition and innovation. Some wines are aged in stainless steel tanks to preserve that fresh, fruity character, while others spend time in oak barrels to add complexity, structure, and those toasty vanilla notes.
So it's a delicate dance finding the right balance for each wine.
It is. It takes a lot of skill and experience, and I think that's what makes these wines so special. It's not just about following a recipe. It's about making decisions, taking risks, and ultimately crafting something unique and expressive.
It really does seem like a labor of love.
It truly is, and that's what I love about Valle d'Aosta wines. They're not just beverages. They're a reflection of the people, the place, the history. They tell a story.
Okay, we've talked about the process, the philosophy, but what about the actual taste? What can people expect when they finally uncork a bottle of Valle d'Aosta wine? What will those mountain grapes taste like?
Well, you know those extreme growing conditions we keep talking about? They definitely leave their mark on the wines. You can generally expect them to have a really vibrant acidity, often quite firm tannins, and a concentration of flavors and aromas that you just wouldn't find in wines from more moderate climates.
So are we talking big, bold, intense wines?
Not always. While some certainly pack a punch, there's a surprising diversity of styles in Valle d'Aosta. It all comes down to the grape variety, the specific terroir, and the winemaker's choices.
Okay, my palate is officially primed. Give me the tasting notes. Let's break it down by those indigenous grapes. Starting with the reds, what should we be looking for in a glass of Petit Rouge?
Think of Petit Rouge as the light and lively one. The wines are typically light to medium bodied, with bright acidity and those refreshing red fruit aromas. Cherries, strawberries, raspberries, you might even get a hint of floral notes.
So, not a heavy hitter, but definitely sounds perfect for a casual get-together or a picnic lunch.
You got it. Now, if you want something with more depth and complexity, then Fumin is your grape.
Ah, yes, Fumin, the Barolo of the Alps. What kind of flavors are we talking about here?
With Fumin, you're going to get those darker fruit notes, blackberries, plums, things like that. And then there's this wonderful earthy complexity, like forest floor, leather, maybe even a little hint of black pepper. It's a wine that really evolves as you sip it, revealing new layers with every taste.
Sounds like the kind of wine you could really get lost in. Perfect for a cozy evening by the fireplace.
Exactly. And then we have Cornelin, which offers a beautiful balance of power and finesse.
Cornelin, the one that's kind of in between Petit Rouge and Fumin in terms of body, right?
That's the one. With Cornelin, you might get those ripe red berries again, but also some delicate floral hints and a touch of spice, maybe a little cinnamon or clove in there.
It sounds like a wine with both structure and elegance.
That's a great way to put it. And it can handle richer dishes, but it still has that finesse.
Okay, my mental tasting notes are getting longer by the minute. Now, remind me about those rarer grapes, Valle and Primetta. What should we be on the lookout for there?
Valle is definitely one for the adventurous drinkers. It's quite rare, but it produces these light-bodied, easy-drinking wines that are perfect for a warm afternoon. Primetta, on the other hand, is completely different. It comes from a late ripening grape, so you get these full-bodied wines with rich, dark fruit flavors and a savory, almost earthy character. They're fantastic with game dishes.
So, Valle for sunshine and Primetta for those cozy winter nights.
Exactly. Now, are you ready to switch gears and explore the whites?
Oh, absolutely. Especially after everything we've learned about Crier Blanc, the phylloxera survivor.
Crier Blanc is truly something special. You can expect those wines to be dry with that signature high acidity, and then you get this amazing range of aromas, citrus fruits, white flowers, and often that really distinctive herbal note that I mentioned earlier.
I'm already a fan. It sounds incredibly refreshing. And what about Petit Arvine, the one that's originally from Switzerland? Remind me what makes it so unique in Valle d'Aosta.
Petit Arvine is all about those extremes, those unexpected flavors. You get that burst of citrus, but then there's this really pronounced saline minerality that's almost salty. It's truly unlike anything you've probably tasted before.
Salty wine. I still can't wrap my head around that, but I'm definitely intrigued.
It's that alpine twist, that element of surprise that makes these wines so fascinating.
Okay, so we've covered the history, the terroir, the grapes, the winemaking. I feel like it's just taken a crash course in Valle d'Aosta wine.
We've covered a lot of ground, that's for sure, but there's one crucial element we haven't touched on yet. The actual experience of visiting Valle d'Aosta.
Ah, yes, the trip itself.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about what's in the bottle, it's about the place, the culture, the people who make it all happen.
Exactly. To truly understand Valle d'Aosta wines, you have to experience them in their natural habitat. So are you ready to take a virtual trip to the Italian Alps?
Oh, absolutely. Lead the way.
So ready for that virtual trip.
Absolutely. Take me there.
All right, close your eyes for a second and imagine this. You're driving along this winding mountain road. The air is crisp and cool, and you've got these towering, snow-capped peaks all around you.
Okay, I'm feeling relaxed already.
And then you look down and see these valleys, just blanketed in these incredible vineyards. They're so green, it's almost unreal. And tucked away in those valleys, you'll find these charming little villages, each one with its own unique story to tell.
It sounds idyllic.
Some of them are medieval, with cobblestone streets and ancient castles. Others are a little more modern, but they all have that special alpine charm.
It's like something out of a movie.
And then you've got the food.
Oh yeah, the food. We talked about some of the pairings, but paint me a picture of the whole culinary scene.
Imagine you walk into one of these cozy little restaurants. You see those rustic wooden tables, maybe a fireplace crackling in the corner.
Okay, I'm there.
And the air just smells amazing. You've got hearty stews simmering, fresh bread baking, and the locals welcome you in like your family. They're so passionate about their food, it's contagious.
It sounds like the perfect mix of warmth and sophistication.
It is. But of course, no meal in Valle d'Aosta is complete without a bottle of local wine.
Of course not.
You can visit the wineries themselves for tastings or enjoy those amazing food and wine pairings at the restaurants.
Sounds like a wine lover's dream. Okay, but beyond the wineries, what else should I be sure to see on my trip to Valle d'Aosta? What are some of those must-see spots?
Well, you can't miss those vineyards themselves. I mean, just imagine walking through those terraced vineyards with the Alps as your backdrop.
It must be incredible.
It is, and a lot of the wineries offer tours, so you can actually see the process up close, learn about the challenges of growing grapes at those altitudes, and really get a sense of the passion that goes into each bottle.
So it's a chance to really get to know the people behind the wines, not just the wines themselves.
Exactly, but it's not just about the wine, you know? Valle d'Aosta is full of history and culture. There are medieval castles, Roman ruins, charming
Do
villages.
you have any recommendations for those castles and villages,
Well,
places that would really capture the spirit of the region?
oh, so many. But if I had to pick a few, I'd say Castello de Fenis. It's a beautifully preserved medieval castle, just like something out of a fairy tale. And then there's the village of Bard. It's got this imposing fortress perched on a rocky crag. You can't miss it. And of course, Aosta itself, the regional capital, with its Roman ruins and charming old town.
Okay, you've officially sold me. I'm booking that trip. But for those of us who can't quite hop on a plane tomorrow, is there any way to get a taste of Valle d'Aosta at home?
Absolutely. The good news is that Valle d'Aosta wines are becoming more widely available, so keep an eye out for those indigenous varieties we talked about. Petit Rouge, Fumin, Prié Blanc, Petit Arvin. You might be surprised what you find.
That's great advice. But what about recreating that whole alpine experience? Any tips?
You know, there are actually a lot of great recipes online for traditional Valle d'Aosta dishes. Polenta, those hearty stews, fontina cheese. Why not try your hand at making some of those?
I love that idea. A little alpine escape right in my own kitchen.
Exactly. It's all about creating an experience, you know, transporting yourself to another place through the power of food and wine.
You know, we started this deep dive with a stack of articles and a lot of curiosity, and now I feel like we've not only explored Valle d'Aosta, but we've uncovered this hidden gem in the world of wine.
It really is a special place.
And it's a reminder that there's always something new to discover, often in the places we least expect it.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all about here on the deep dive, right?
Exactly. We
Mhm.
dig a little deeper, explore the nuances, and hopefully inspire our listeners to do the same. So to everyone out there, we encourage you, seek out a bottle of Valle d'Aosta wine. Let your curiosity be your guide, and embark on your own little alpine adventure, whether it's a trip to the region itself or a culinary exploration right in your own kitchen.
Here's to that.
Until next time, keep diving deep.